Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to sarva-vikārātmā. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. I apologize for starting a little later than usual. Canto 2, which is entitled A Cosmic Manifestation. Chapter 10, Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And this morning we're doing text 32. Without further ado, we'll start the class. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana-ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana-ranjana, Jamunatira Vannachari, Jamunatira Vannachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana-ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana-ranjana, Jamunatira Vannachari, Jamunatira Vannachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja-vihari, Jaya Radha-madhava, Kunja-vihari, Jaya Radha-madhava, Kunja-vihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajagacharya Stotra Sadasya Maharaj Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajagacharya Stotra Sadasya Maharaj Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Charya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Vijñāna-rūpiṇī. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Siddhartha Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha. Narayana Namaskritya Narum Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhirayat. Nashta Prayesu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 32. Guṇātmakānīndriyāṇi bhūtādi-prabhavā guṇāḥ manaḥ sarva-vikārātmā buddhir vijñāna-rūpiṇī guṇātmakānīndriyāṇi bhūtādi-prabhavā guṇāḥ manaḥ sarva-vikārātmā buddhir vijñāna-rūpiṇī. Guṇātmakānīndriyāṇi bhūtādi-prabhavā guṇāḥ manaḥ sarva-vikārātmā buddhir vijñāna-rūpiṇī. Hare Krishna. Please chant.
guṇātmakānīndriyāṇi bhūtādi-prabhavā guṇāḥ manaḥ sarva-vikārātmā buddhir vijñāna-rūpiṇī. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
bhūtādi-prabhavā guṇāḥ manaḥ sarva-vikārātmā buddhir vijñāna-rūpiṇī.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
guṇātmakānīndriyāṇi bhūtādi-prabhavā guṇāḥ manaḥ sarva-vikārātmā buddhir vijñāna-rūpiṇī.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
guṇātmakānīndriyāṇi
bhūtādi-prabhavā guṇāḥ manaḥ sarva-vikārātmā buddhir vijñāna-rūpiṇī. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right, we'll go to the word for word. Guṇātmakānīndriyāṇi, attached to the qualities. Indriyāṇi, the senses. Bhūtādi, material ego. Prabhavā, influenced by. Guṇāḥ, the modes of material nature. Manaḥ, the mind. Sarva, all. Vikāra, affection, happiness and distress. Atma, form. Buddhi, intelligence. Vijñāna, deliberation. Rūpiṇī, featuring. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences, happiness and distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. Report by Srila Prabhupada. Illusioned by the material nature, the living entities with false ego illusioned by the material nature, the living entity identifies with false ego. More clearly, when the living entity is entrapped by the material body, he at once identifies with the bodily relationships, forgetting his own identity as spirit soul. This false ego associates with different kinds or with different modes of material nature, and thus the senses become attached to the modes of material nature. Mind is the instrument for feeling different material experiences, but intelligence is deliberative and can change everything for the better. The intelligent person, therefore, can attain salvation from the illusion of material existence by proper use of intelligence. An intelligent person can detect the awkward position of material existence and thus begin to inquire as to what he is, why he is subjected to different kinds of miseries, and how to get rid of all miseries. And thus, by good association, an advanced intelligent person can turn towards the better life of self-realization. It is advised, therefore, that an intelligent person associate with the great sages and saints who are on the path of salvation. By such association, one can receive instructions which are able to slacken the conditioned soul's attachment for matter, and thus the intelligent man gradually gets rid of the illusion of matter and false ego, and is promoted to the real life of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Oma ginati virandesya gyana gana shalakaya chakshu militam jena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschathyadi Shatarini. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gurati Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, the English translation again. The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences, happiness and distress, And the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. Hare Krishna. So, here in this particular text, much is being talked about with the false ego, the mind, the intelligence. Their connections are being described here. And as Srila Prabhupada was reading the purport, he also talks very much about the intelligence later on and what the intelligence does and what we should be about so that we can get to the final destination of the spiritual nature, which is filled with Sat Chit Ananda, eternality, knowledge, full knowledge, and the highest happiness we can ever have, bliss. So, first, the sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are the products of the false ego. The sense organs, the things that on the body, the parts of the body that we use in the different activities of vision to acquire knowledge. We acquire knowledge by seeing, so the sense organ for that is the eyes. We acquire knowledge by hearing. The sense organ for that is the ears. We get knowledge sometimes by smelling. The sense organs for the nose. By tasting, that's the tongue. Or sometimes we just say the mouth, but it's actually the tongue inside the mouth. And by feeling the skin. So the sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature. What are the modes of material nature? Goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the living entity, that's us, we have the option of using these senses to do something good, to do something passionate, or to do something bad. Or as I said here, ignorance, something dark, something that's not good for either our welfare or someone else's welfare. But we use the senses for that. So this is a general statement, but a very important statement. And then the modes of material nature are the products of the false ego. We are transcendental by nature, but because we have this physical body and the subtle mind, we actually connect our activities to either good activities or make them good activities by how we act, how we use the senses, actually. Or we can do things passionate, or we can do things that are destructive. So the modes of nature are products of the false ego. What's real ego and what's false ego? Real ego is to understand who we are in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The reason the word servant is used, even though we know we are created by God, and so by constitution, we really should be children of God. And some religions do actually use the word children of God. But why? Because the Constitution says servants of God. Well, it is to help us to cultivate humility. Everything in existence is created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything in existence, spiritual or material, it's from the Lord. But we are put in the category, or Krishna consciousness insists that we label ourselves as servants of God. As a matter of fact, even the very highly placed personalities, some that are even expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, they say they are servants. Advaita Acharya says he's a servant. Lord Nityananda says he's a servant of Lord Chaitanya. So the idea of service is very important. Service is not a put down at all. In fact, it's quite an elevated position to be a servant, because when we call ourselves servants, then we are saying we are putting our hearts towards serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, pleasing Krishna. So servant is not a demeaning position. In the material world, you look at it all, somebody says servant, and then he has a boss, and the boss tells him what to do, and sometimes the boss can even abuse the servant and so on, and the servant has to put up with it. No, in the spiritual realm, it is an honor, literally, to be serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a great privilege, because that's where our love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is expressed, and that's where our happiness also comes. So, real ego is to accept ourselves through and through as servants of a Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, when we talk about Supreme Personality of Godhead, that Krishna, everything about him is also him. He's absolute. So when we say servants of a Supreme Personality of Godhead, it also implies that we will be serving the spiritual master and we'll be serving the devotees. So for us in the material world, service means transcendental loving assistance, that is a service, to the deity, to the spiritual master, and to the devotees. And there are some devotees that we came to Krishna consciousness before they came, so we categorize them as junior. Some that came around the same time we came, so we are like peers. And some that came before we came to Krishna consciousness, so we look at as seniors. But all of them have to be served. And that's where our happiness is. Now, when we take or put ourselves away from that service and say, we're going to do everything to please, I'm going to do everything to please me, then that's false ego. Because real ego is, I'm a servant of Krishna and Krishna's devotees and every living entity to the best of my ability. And so when we get away from that kind of thinking, then our ego has become tainted, or in this case called false. So we should really use our senses to satisfy ourselves only as is necessary. But for the most part, we should use our senses to serve the Supreme Lord, the Spiritual Master, and the devotees. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences, Srila Prabhupada translates here. Happiness and distress. That is our situation in the material world. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're going through distress. That's the way of the material world. You can't escape it. You can't escape part happiness and part distress type of lifestyle. You can't escape it. In our heart of hearts, we don't want to go through any distress. And it is not imagination. It is a fact that we don't want to go through distress. Why? Because our real nature does not go through distress. Our real nature is the soul. And the soul is Ananda, it's always happy. And so our real essence wants to be in that situation where they are always happy, that we are always happy. But not in the material world. It doesn't work like that here. So the material world imposes on us the stress that we don't want. Sometimes distress happens, it's almost like it's destined to happen. It happens, we didn't invite it in any way, and it comes anyway. So that's the nature of this world. And the mind has to deal with this. So that's why it's translated that the mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences. And the intelligence, sometimes it's kind of difficult for people who are not in Krishna consciousness. They come to the Krishna consciousness and then they hear there's a mind and there's intelligence. It's all part of the subtle body, because you can't touch the mind, you can't touch the intelligence physically. But why the distinction? Well, in Krishna consciousness, intelligence, as it says here, is the feature of the mind's deliberation. The mind accepts things and rejects things. I like this, I don't like this, and so on. But the intelligence always pricks the mind. Is what you've selected that you say you like good for you, or good for your neighbor, or good for service to the Supreme Personality of God? Is what you've selected that you say you like. So the mind is caused to think about the choice. So that's why I said here the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. Makes you think about something before you do it. If you're going to do something bad, the intelligence always kicks in. In a split second to tell you there's some consequence, you're going to face some consequence. First of all, you're going to do something in the mode of ignorance. Something bad is you're going to be doing something in the mode of ignorance. But you'll be warned, though. Always a warning comes. There is consequence, and you're not going to like the consequence. But then still, the free choice is there. The person would be warned by the intelligence, but if they want to continue, then they continue at the risk of the sinful reaction from it. If they get caught, then they've been caught at this material level here. But if they don't get caught, then Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, has made a note of that wrong thing. There's no getting away with it. Getting away doesn't exist. There's only immediate punishment if we're caught, or punishment later by Yamaraj if we're not caught here. So there's no getting away with doing something in the mode of ignorance. No getting away from it. So the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. Now, the super soul, the Lord in the heart, speaks through our intelligence. That's why the mind is forced to, or the intelligence kind of stops the mind for a split second, makes the mind think about things, what they're getting ready to do. That's general. But when a devotee begins to do devotional service, then the Lord in the heart is very pleased, and more information comes to us through our intelligence. In fact, the mind is sharpened so much that we begin to even experience messages. They come so quickly, messages in every turn of life. The intelligence is just, literally given so much by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a super soul. So, those who don't know that, the super soul, who don't know this super soul can speak through our intelligence, we can just simply ask. Ask through prayer. Prayer is a way we ask. But we should ask things that help us in our devotion. We shouldn't be asking for things for our material life, because if that's all that we're interested in, then we're going to stay here at the end of our life, and the soul will go into another body for material life. And we've talked about the fact that there is part happiness and part distress in life, and we don't like the distress, needless to say. So we have to move away from the material world so that we can actually have happiness, total happiness, and that is the whole idea of going back to the spiritual world. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, we are illusioned by the material nature, and through that, the living entity identifies with the false ego. I am this body. Bhūtādi, designations. I am American. I am British. I am Indian. I am African. And there's this particular culture, so there's a way we do things. And all of those, as soon as we think that way, we are in the mode. Even if the thing that we do is supposed to be helpful, that's in the mode of goodness. If what we do is just to try to take what is supplied by the earth and make ourselves quite wealthy, that's the mode of passion. Or if we do things opposite of what's expected by law, that's mode of ignorance. So the living entity is then trapped in this material body. And if we identify with the bodily relationship, then that's when we forget who we really are as spirit soul. And so the idea of Krishna consciousness is to turn our minds away from thinking materially into thinking and living based on the spiritual rule of law. Now, the mind, as we said, is the instrument for feeling so many material experiences. But when a person comes into Krishna consciousness, like you all have, then the proper instructions begin. Still, we have our free choice. We may go with what's been said, or we may decide to do whatever we want to do. But by the Lord's mercy, good answers, intelligent statement keeps coming about what life is about. And our eyes get open. The mind's eyes get open more. And we see things as they are, and we realize, yeah, this life is difficult. There's sometimes happiness, but it's only for a while. And then the stress sets in. And I don't like the stress. And it's here, in this material world, that is like that. So why should I really stay here? Is there an alternative? So these are all very good questions. A good question, is there an alternative? And what is the alternative? And what should I do to get to that alternative? That's the intelligence bringing these points up. That's how we begin to attain salvation. Getting away from the illusion of material existence. The illusion means that we think the material existence is going to, we go after the material things that are provided, that we're going to be happy with it. There are many people who have actually done well, struggling in life, more the passion, and they become wealthy. But then they realize that after they become wealthy, they can't really be happy. That wealth does not make you happy. Wealth gives convenience, but it doesn't give happiness. And after a while, some people think that if something is convenient because wealth has been able to get us that source of convenience, they think that way. And that is happiness. It doesn't take much for other things to happen for us to realize that we can still be miserable. This picture is in my mind. One time I was on the highway. For those in this area, it's Route 83 South, towards Harrisburg. And I was driving a Toyota Camry at that time. That's the car I was using. On the highway, so there are two lanes, this highway. On my left was a Mercedes-Benz. And we're pretty much going the same speed. I caught up and we were just traveling. I don't do that often, but at that time, the two cars were going the same speed. And I happened to look in that Mercedes-Benz, there was a lady driving it. And the first thing that caught my eye was that the lady was crying. And I'm thinking, it's a very nice looking car. Very nicely polished and everything, but the driver is crying. I thought many people like to get a car like a Mercedes-Benz, and she already got one. So what's the issue? So the Mercedes-Benz is not giving her happiness because she's driving and she's crying. So that's the way material life is. It is not those, as we call the toys that we get with material energy that gives happiness. It's only convenient, and being that convenience is up to a point. So it is important to come to good association. The intelligence should pull us to good association. Good association means those, or be around those who understand what self-realization is. They are the body, they are not the bodies, they are the souls. They are using the bodies only as necessary, the mind only as necessary, turning towards things that are spiritual and getting ready to get out of here. They understand the material world for what it is. It's not home. Home is a spiritual world. And home, there's no anxiety. There's no reason to be unhappy. Mm? The only time it happens that it seems things are morose in the spiritual world is when Krishna is not immediately around the devotees. Then they miss Krishna. And in missing him, it feels that there's some moroseness. But Srila Prabhupada has already described that we can't understand that feeling from the material standpoint, the way we understand things here. That actually, when Krishna is not around, that feeling of them missing Krishna gives intense, loving connection with Krishna. So then he says that we'll have to go to the spiritual world to actually understand that feeling. And when Krishna is not around, why the gopis, the cowherd ladies, feel the way they feel, and they want Krishna's association. They want to be with him, they want to serve him, they want to love him, do whatever it is to satisfy Krishna's senses. So that's the place that we need to be, and that's the place that we are being prepared to go. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, Kama Yoga, text 27. So it talks about the modes of material nature. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasya ahankara bhūtādi-prabhavā kataham iti manyate. The spirit soul, the person that's bewildered, that is under the influence of the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, that person thinks himself to be the one that's doing all the activities, but actually they are carried out by nature. It's a little hard to understand when people say, well, I'm the one that's doing this, I'm the one that's doing this, I'm the one that's doing this. But this particular text says, the bewildered spirit soul, the bewildered person thinks that they're the ones that are doing things, the doer of activities, but actually they're carried out by the mode of nature. Now, a few texts back, it was explained to us the different parts, the different senses, and the demigods that are given control of the various parts of the body and the senses. So if we are the ones that do this, do our activities as it seems that way, the demigods control this. But what do the demigods do? The demigods permit us to use the body, the different senses that each one is in control of. So if that function of that part of the body is stopped, no matter how much we have of free will, but we want to do something, we're unable to. Case in point, many of us can walk. Just walk with our legs. There's a demigod for control of the legs. I don't know all the names of them though. But sometimes we see some people, they're not walking normally. They're using a walking stick. Sometimes with some people, they're not walking at all. They're in a wheelchair. And sometimes we see people who are confined to a bed. They can't even get out, much less walk. They all have free choice. But can they use that part of the body? The answer is no. Well, then we don't have much control that we think we do. So the real reason, what is really going on is we get permitted to use those parts of our bodies and get permitted to use our senses. We can see, but they are also blind people. They can't use their eyes. Sometimes people are born that way, or sometimes it happens to them. Something happens based on whatever their destiny is, and then they can't see. From that point on, they can't. So there's permission given by the demigods. But if there's permission given by the demigods to use different parts of the body, the demigods under the control, those permissions or those powers given to them for controlling the different parts of the body by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So ultimately, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the one who's in control of everything. Demigods are his assistants. So one, we should be humble enough and grateful enough for everything that happens in our lives, because it could be very different at any time. Now, so we are literally almost automatically allowed to use any part of our bodies in activities. So we tend to think we're in full control of our bodies. This is what we're just talking about. So we shouldn't think that way. We should be grateful when we are allowed to use our senses. We should be grateful. So that should be part of our prayer of gratitude. The person in material consciousness thinks that, to the false ego, they're thinking that he's the doer of everything. He doesn't know that everything, the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, and then the mechanism works under the Supreme God's supervision. So that should be clear in our mind. Now, when it comes to the senses, the center of the senses, the controller of the senses in the body is the mind. You want to do something, the mind has to permit, and then the sense that is for that thing, for that activity, goes to do, that assists in the activity and the performance of that activity. So in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, text states, Srila Prabhupada describes in the purport, when one uses the mind to chant Hare Krishna, we fix the mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why do we do that? Well, first of all, let's look at the nature of the mind. The mind is very fickle. So it's necessary to engage the mind by force to think of Krishna. Now, here's the solutions now, how to go back to Godhead. Chanting, in this Kali Yuga, is chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Sometimes the mind fights us. I don't want to do this. I don't want to, so many things, so many excuses. But Srila Prabhupada explains, we can get fixed in doing spiritual activity. We can. We have to force the mind to go along with the spiritual program. For example, if a child does not want to go to school, some children, they don't like school. But the child doesn't want to go to school though, but he's forced repeatedly, every weekday. Parents insist, go to school. They arrange. Sometimes they grab the child one way or the other. The child doesn't get to not go to school. This is done repeatedly, week in, week out. Gradually, the child will have a change of mind and go to school automatically. This is what we have to do to the mind. The mind sometimes doesn't want to do certain things. Spiritual, good for us, for the soul. But if we use intelligence to say, but it is for our good, and if we don't do that, we get to face having to take another body and be here in this material world. And you already know that sometimes the distresses, you don't worry too much about the happiness, what material happiness, but the distresses that come is difficult to deal with. Anything can hit us at any time. We live a life like that. Anything can change in our lives at any time. And usually it changes for the worse. So why do you want to come to this place again? So then with that kind of reasoning, the intelligence begins to force the mind. Do it. Chant. This is not as hard as we're making it. Chant the holy name. Hear and serve. And be nice to people. Everyone. So these literally, little by little, every day forcing the mind, and also taking stock of things that we may not have done correctly, and being determined to change for the better. Constantly, every day, we will force the mind to actually do the right thing, and that is purification of the mind. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 17, in text 16, austerity of the mind, austerity of the mind. Satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. So what we were talking about was, the examples was describing is self-control and purification of one's existence. That's what we were talking about just a minute ago. They are austerities of the mind. Srila Prabhupada explains that to make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. We would like to have sense gratification, but for a higher purpose, we decide we're not going to involve ourselves in sense gratification. Sometimes, even when the body gets older, some things we just have to stop doing because the mind, the body is breaking down. And so there are things that we used to enjoy doing, some things that we used to enjoy eating, and now we have to stop. And so based on what the body needs in order to at least keep going a little bit better, we have to use the mind and put the whole body into that austerity of what we used to have. And there are people who used to just have all kinds of sweets, but something has happened to their body now. They cannot. Sugar makes the body go through more trouble. So now all sweets are gone. And devotees take sweets. And when it comes to that time, when it comes to people are being served and there's, oh, take this for food. I said, no, I don't. No, I don't take dairy, so I can't take this. No, I don't take sugar, so I can't take this. Then because of the state of the body, now the mind has to accept that austerity for the sake of the body, so that we can serve people and serve, devotees, and also serve Guru and Krishna. Sometimes the mind, and this we have to be very careful, the mind can put us in situations that because we're not happy, we become envious of people who are happy. Unfortunately, that happens even in families. Sometimes envious family members can act like that. When they hear that, oh, this particular family, I'm talking about the extended family now, members of the extended family, their children are doing so nice, materially, that is, then they become envious. When they hear that somebody else is suffering, then they become happy. I'm suffering and I'm not the only one. The other person is also suffering. These are all thoughts in the mode of ignorance. We have to stay away from it, but it's very common. That's why we're bringing it up. Evil people become happy when they hear that someone else is suffering. And it's easy to fall into that situation. What we need to counteract that is we don't belong to this world anyway. Happiness and distress happen in everybody's life. Therefore, don't say because distress is happening in my life and happiness you seem to notice it's happening in somebody else's life, then I'm going to be envious of them. Pray for that person to get out of the material world, and you practice Krishna consciousness so you can get out of the material world, and I should so that I can get out of the material world. That's the real solution. So Srila Prabhupada says one should not deviate from Krishna consciousness. You have to tell the mind that. No deviation from Krishna consciousness. You should always avoid sense gratification. It will not, no matter how pleasing it seems to immediately, in the end, it's not to our advantage to involve in material sense gratification. How do we purify our nature? It's just to become Krishna conscious. That's all. Satisfaction of the mind can only take place when we take it away from thoughts of material sense enjoyment. The more, Srila Prabhupada says, the more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. You cannot get totally satisfied based on sense enjoyment. But material activities, if we put it aside and then we put our hearts into service, devotional service, it is lasting happiness that comes, and it comes from the heart. It doesn't come from external material things. It comes from the heart. And that happiness is wonderful, and it goes on to the rest of our lives. And after this body, we get it even better because we go back to the spiritual world. Life there is much, much, much more satisfying, much more conducive to happiness and love, all of that. So the advanced devotees, like Srila Prabhupada, they're trying to get us into a better situation. Stay away from duplicity, the mind. There are people who just think one thing for someone. They try to deceive somebody else based on who they're talking about. They say one thing about a situation, and it's somebody else, they take a different angle of the same situation. Always trying to manipulate the thinking of others. That is very dangerous. It is also in the mode of ignorance. Rather than do that, one should speak and think of the welfare of everybody. And the devotee should be silent. Silence does not mean you don't talk, but silence means we contemplate self-realization, things that are Krishna conscious, how to help. So, and also for the mind, we have to be straightforward in our dealings. Very important to be straightforward. Straightforward means honest. That's one way to purify our existence. So the mind can be purified. Srila Prabhupada explains in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 27. We'll stop after that. This is almost 9. The process of being liberated from the misconception of material identification. First, people start with fruitive activities. They work because I want something for me. And then people go higher than that to empiric philosophy, things about the material world. And they make up, so this is where a lot of assumptions come also. But we have to transcend all of that to devotional service. Under instructions of senior devotees and the spiritual master, how to serve Krishna and how to serve Krishna's devotees. And from that, higher than that, or the final, this is for the mind only though. In devotional service will continue forever, but the mind comes to a transcendental realization. Now, what is said in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita about the soul is actually realized in a person's life. How do we get to transcendental realization? That's when we take everything that we do and dovetail it to Krishna consciousness. That means that everything that I do, even material, how can I, tweak it in such a way that it becomes a Krishna conscious activity? This you may not have the answers to, but you can always pray, and your intelligence, helped by the super soul, can kick in and tell you this material thing, you can do it such and such a way, this way, that way, and it becomes a Krishna conscious activity. It becomes a Karma Yoga type activity. Karma Yoga means you do whatever, but then you give the proceeds of it, part of it, to the Supreme Lord for service to the Lord. So we should keep hearing topics about Lord Krishna, because that's how we purify the mind. So the conclusion is, engage both the mind and senses in activities in Krishna consciousness. In regular activities, even material activities, pray for the intelligence to turn all of them, or at least part of them, to Krishna consciousness. And finally, chant and keep chanting and keep chanting and keep chanting. Chant incessantly. Do not stop, because our minds will stay in Krishna consciousness if we chant continuously, without japa beads or with japa beads. Chant. And finally, when that is done, then when it comes time to go back, since we've been chanting continuously, we will remember Krishna easily. And then Krishna says, you remember me, you come to me. You need to go back to the spiritual world. Bhūtādi-prabhavā jai. So thank you for coming on. You always get help from, and as I'm speaking, I'm also hearing for my own self, because it's through the mercy of my spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada. I pray for whatever comes from them to me, and I just communicate that. Hare Krishna. So this is the time to unmute yourself. Ask questions. Nupur Mataji, Hare Krishna. Thank you. We got your text in the chat. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? We were talking about the mind and then the senses and how to purify them, and also how to use them in Krishna service, how to recognize more the goodness, more the passion, more the ignorance. The devotee should act at the very least in the more the goodness, but we have to chant, and that's what takes us to the more the transcendence, higher than the more the goodness. More the goodness only without going higher, that's done by religionists, good religionists. You go to the heavenly planets by doing that, but we're going to the spiritual world. So the chanting is very important. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? If not, then we're almost at the top of the hour. I'd like to thank you for coming on and to hear. And I hope everybody's doing okay. We actually, those of us in this area, dodged the big one. I'm talking about the snow. People got almost 2 feet of snow. We go towards New York. That's what happened. So anyway, keep keep ourselves up mentally and to keep going, because this is not a place. Let snow remind us we're not home. The difficulty from the snow to remind us we're not home. We take Krishna consciousness even more seriously. The weather is wonderful in the spiritual world the whole time. Srila Prabhupada has already described it in his Lilamrita. So we'll stop here. Or any final questions, comment? Okay. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhivya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Again, thank you. Have a nice, wonderful Krishna conscious day. Hare Krishna. Jai. Hare Krishna to everybody that's sending